Are there any later?
No later items, Your Worship.
Thank you, CEO. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated? Moved and second. Any further discussion? Seeing any, I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that the council would like to remove for discussion later on in the meeting? Not seeing any. Can I get a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please? Move second. Any further discussion? Call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is committee reports. Verbal report from Chairperson Veintimilla on the committee of the whole meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we just had two items on the agenda earlier today. The first was a report on the hike and bike access. This is an update and follow-up conversation we started a couple of weeks ago. The motion that was passed by council was that council direct staff to develop a consistent signage strategy, bollards, and painting for all public pedestrian walkways to the hike and bike trails, and to report back to council. And that staff be directed to inform Riverside Villas that the existing sign must be removed, and that's a sign that was placed since the last time we met with them. And in addition to that, we had a discussion on regard to NAIF policy and budget review, and received that report for information.
Thank you, Chairperson Veintimilla. Next item is a delegation to discuss transitional housing. We have Marieze Tarr, Executive Director, Desert Sun Consulting, and Dianne Goulden, Executive Director, Cycle Down and Living Needs Society. Your presentation up there, so you're good to go.
It's actually Dianne. I don't want to be done.
Thank you for correcting me.
Okay, so thank you very much for being willing to listen to us tonight. I am going to.
Oh, just a second.
Yeah, I was just wondering how I was gonna go.
I got you those, but not the clicker.
Okay, no. Here we go. Thank you. So we'll start by just telling you a little bit about the history of our organizations. Desert Sun Counseling was established in 1998. And I think I'm not gonna bore you all and tell you about everything that we do, you can all read. But we provide cradle to grave support services to our vulnerable community members in both the towns of SOWINS, Oliver, and also OK Falls. And we also strive to bridge gaps that we see in our community. And one of our programs that has unfortunately became a very huge program is our Safe Home program. This started at the start, or I would say about 6 months into the pandemic. Before the pandemic, our Safe Home was funded for 2 women and children. And since the start of the pandemic, we've housed an average of between 6 and 10 women. And to give you an idea, at the moment, we are housing 8 women and 11 children. We used to house women up to 12 days in our Safe Home, and then we tried to move them on into next stage housing. Unfortunately, because there is no way to move women because of the housing crisis in the South Okanagan, we are now housing women between 3 and 4 months at a time. We only have space for 2 women, and so the rest of the women that we are looking after are staying in local motels with kitchenettes, which is not ideal, but is better than having women who are homeless or staying in the violent situations that they flee. And so during the women's stay at our Safe Home, we provide them with support, counseling, legal aid, and we connect them to other resources if we can't provide them ourselves. I'm now going to hand you over to Dianne, and she's going to talk about SOWINS.
Yeah, so we're South Okanagan Women in Need in Penticton, and we serve same geographical area as Desert Sun. We serve from Summerland all the way up to the Princeton Hope region. We're started in 1981. I'm the new executive director. They're fairly new. I came in May from Saskatchewan, so from the Flatlands. I'm perpetually lost in this region. So, but yeah, so we serve women and children. Women, our mandate is women who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing violence and abuse. We have our shelter in Penticton, and we have 24 beds. So we have beds for both single women and then women with children. And within our shelter, we also have 7 what would be considered second stage housing programs. So our mandate for our emergency shelter is used to be 30 days. And then we extended it from 30 days to upwards to 3 months. Again, much like Marieze and Desert Sun are experiencing, because there is a lack of affordable, adequate, and safe housing for women and families throughout the South Okanagan region. Our women are staying in our emergency housing for lengthy periods of time, we had women staying upwards to a year this past year, because there really is no place for them to go. The motels are full. There's almost a complete lack of affordable housing. The motels, for the record, are not affordable housing. We had one woman just recently vacated because they increased her rent for a room with a double bed and a hot plate from $1,200 a month to $1,500 a month. So the majority of our clients are on very fixed incomes. And so it's also really debilitating for women to stay extended periods of time in emergency housing because they're not building the independent skills that they need to build in order to be successful out into the communities. So in emergency housing, much like safe homes or in a shelter, it's really the provision of emergency services. We're not really geared towards sort of that long-term independent programming that is really going to help them navigate everything and navigate. And we do have staff, of course, that help them, assist them with all of those pieces, but it's a very difficult situation for us right now in the South Okanagan. There is literally no place for women to go. So we have a number of different other congruent and collaborative programs, but in every single one of our programs, our counseling programs, our housing programs, our victim services programs, sexual assault programs, all those pieces, our single greatest barrier right now is the lack of safe, affordable, adequate housing. Adequate housing is actually a bit of a term that we use because a lot of when domestic violence or violence in a home has been flagged, it's automatically an MCFD flag as well. So for women who have children, generally they enter right into the child welfare system and their families. So, and generally what will happen is if they do go into a more formal child welfare process with MCFD, there's certain provisions that they have to have. They can't just move into a 1-bedroom if they have 3 children, or they can't move into a bachelor's suite that it'll be fine, we'll squish in. They cannot do that. MCFD will give them basically these rules that they have to follow. So right now, 1-bedrooms are going for $1,500 a month for women that have 2 or 3 children. A 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom housing would just be completely unattainable. So that's where I think the second stage housing piece really comes in.
Yeah, so SOWINS and Desert Sun, we service, women in the South Okanagan, and so traditionally we collaborate and we work together to serve our clients better. So we will refer clients to each other's organization, especially sometimes if we have a high-risk woman in the South Okanagan, we will feel that we can't look after her and keep her safe, so we will rather send her up to SOWINS and vice versa. And then especially in the last couple of, I would say in the last year, because there's been such a struggle to find transitional and second stage housing, we've kind of worked together to try and find a place to send women after they we feel they have graduated out of the safe home. And like Dianne says, you know, a major gap in our programming is providing women with that next step of independent living. While they're still sort of under our care and we can still provide them some support, but they are not ready or able to live totally independently.
So why is this initiative important to the South Okanagan? And one of the things I just realized that we didn't really touch on in this presentation is the effects of the pandemic that we've had in our community. So as we all know, I was just speaking with 2 real estate agents today that were saying they just can't believe the influx of people that have come to the Okanagan. So if you are commuting every day and you're not really liking the big city life and the pandemic hit, and you were on the fence about moving to the Okanagan, it turns out you hit the button as soon as COVID hit. So we've had this great influx of all these populations into the Okanagan, but subsequently they have driven up the prices of housing, number one. But they've also were very interested in the, you know, Airbnb vacation rental piece, right? So they're recognizing that this is a great economic opportunity. At the same time that all of the motel owners have recognized that this is a great economic opportunity. We can't really lay blame on them for charging $1,500 a month for these dilapidated hotel rooms. But so the pandemic has intensified every socioeconomic issue that we come into contact on a daily basis. I think there's not an ED anywhere in Canada or probably North America right now that's not going, are you seeing this? Because we're getting our butts absolutely handed to us right now. So it's tough to keep up. And then of course we have the staffing shortages, which is going to challenge too. But so as I put in here, we're currently facing this housing crisis in the South Okanagan. So there's a shortfall in rental units, but there's also a lack of safe, affordable, adequate, and appropriate housing for women and their children. So in all provinces, women generally experience severe forms of housing crisis need disproportionately. So it's the lower populations or the most vulnerable populations that generally feel the pinch of these types of housing crises. Research shows us that lack of safe, affordable, adequate housing for women and children often leave them with no option but to return to violent, precarious, and marginalized positions. So a lot of our women, we can work with them extensively on leaving their partners, leaving violent situations. But when they walk out the doors of our safe homes and our transition houses, I mean, the vulnerability that they face, we almost always say like, she's likely to go back, right? So we'll just be ready for when that happens. So housing security, again, as I said, it's uniquely dangerous for women and children. And it also, precarious housing leads to cycles of violence and intergenerational homelessness. So yeah, it's very critical to solving chronic homelessness. And I know that hasn't been a big issue here, chronic homelessness in Regina. We had a massive issue for years and years. But I think right now is just the time with the pandemic and everything we've experienced. It's just it comes to critical capacity.
And the scary thing, I think, that both of us are talking about, that we're both seeing, is this huge increase in senior women accessing our service, who, if we didn't take them into our safe home, they would be homeless, or they would be living in RVs that are totally, you know, not safe. And just like Dianne said, we see so many women going back to the abusive relationships that they left, because after their time with us, there's nowhere else for them to go. And so as a society, it has a huge impact on the children who are raised in those homes as well, because we know that vulnerability of children growing up in houses where there's domestic violence, is huge. So what will the impact of this project be on the town of Oliver and the South Okanagan? If by providing women and children with affordable housing and a safe place to live, we immediately increase their discretionary income. So they have more money available for food. We also find that a lot of women and children are very food insecure. And they also have the ability, when they are in our care, they have the ability to start thinking about the future and saving money for their future. We also know that when women and children are provided the support that they need, their children actually do better academically, which increases their success later on in life hugely. And we also know when they have a safe place to live, that has positive health outcomes for those women. A lot of senior women that we look at or that we take in have to choose between their medication and a safe place to live. So women cannot afford the medication that is prescribed to them, like diabetes or managing chronic illnesses. They are not able to do that if they are living in precarious housing situations. And then, like Dianne said, we often see that homelessness is a generational thing. So if we could provide women with safe second stage housing, we will actually break that cycle of intergenerational homelessness. And by providing women with second stage housing, we will increase the local purchasing power. It will have a positive socioeconomic impact on the South Okanagan. There will actually be more women able to join the workforce in the South Okanagan. So it definitely will have a positive impact on this area.
And one of the things I wanted just to add to that, what Marieze said, is a lot of the women, when they come to us in these crisis situations, they are dependent on social assistance or a violent relationship, or there's other cycles of dependency in terms of substance use in those pieces. It is remarkable when we provide a level of safety and security, how the transformation in women and families. It's remarkable. It's like they can breathe. Because if we come to them and say, okay, what are your goals? What are your goals? Like they're in crisis mode, right? They're thinking, are you kidding me right now? You want me to sign up for a GED program? Like I'm homeless. Me and my 3 kids are living out of these 2 garbage bins. So the provision of housing, it allows women to breathe. It allows women to take pause and actually be able to say, what is it? Where can I go from here? Because there is no from here when you're homeless. It's just that, right? It's basically reducing you to like ground level survival. So it's very hard to see any future for yourself or your children when you're experiencing homelessness or housing crisis. So how will we fund this initiative? So we originally started by looking at the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation released a big call for proposals. And we got pretty excited. SOWINS and Desert Sun got together and started talking about this opportunity. We both believe in the power of partnerships and not acting in silos in the same geographical area. So it was kind of a win-win for us to come and start talking about these issues. And it's just great to sit and talk about these issues and soundboard off one another. So we started looking at this proposal, but upon further review, the proposal is extremely difficult. They actually made it virtually impossible. Not that we wouldn't be up for the challenge, but it's just a very difficult process to go through. And so,
and there's also not a lot of funding, it's federal funding, so it's for the whole country. And, you know, the way that it was explained to us, I'm sure that, you know, the larger centers who already have land, they already have a plan, you know, they're just so much further ahead than we are, that, you know, they will be the first in line to get,
the funding.
funding.
And they want organizations to be shovel ready. So in order to be shovel ready, you need all of these reports and you need to have all these surveys done and all of this work done. And we estimated it could be upwards to $30,000-$50,000 just to put those things in place and still not guaranteed the funding. So Marieze and I, Desert Sun and SOWINS already have a great collaborative working relationship with BC Housing. And so we just started planting some seeds with BC Housing. And although, as we put in here, they haven't committed to the project. We think it's a really viable opportunity. And we think it's also a viable opportunity to further partner with the town of Oliver on this potential project. So again, we have a great working relationship with BC Housing, and the great thing about BC Housing is like CMHC would give us a certain amount of operational funding. I think it was 3 years, but then of course you're looking at a very big program and how moving forward, there's no operational grants, right? It's all program related grants. So we would look at in 3 years, we'd be in a bit of a panic situation in terms of how we're going to fund the program moving forward. So of course, partnering with BC Housing makes more sense, because then we'll look at the sustainability of a program like this as opposed to a pilot and then a panic situation.
So what do we need from the town of Oliver? We need this, your support that you are in principle on board with this initiative. No, we're not asking you for, you know, money or anything like that. We just want to know that you are willing to explore this more with us. We do need land where we can build 20 to 25 units for women, as well as some bigger units that will be suitable for women and children. And so when we started looking at land, we worked with a local realtor, and there's not a lot, I'm sure you guys know that there's not a lot of land available, but she made us aware of the land that's available on Station Street. And so we want to know, is that a possibility? Has that land been sold? You know, if not, is there some way we can work together to, you know, come up with some planning for that land? Or do you have another suggestion? And yeah, so we just want to know if the council is supportive of this initiative, and if you are willing to explore this further with ourselves.
Yeah, so SOWINS and Desert Sun is excited for the possibilities that this brings forward. So again, right, help with the homelessness issue, less socioeconomic issues, better mental health for women and children, increased labor force in the community, preventative parenting programs provided on site, better academic outcomes for children. And I think we also want to stress too that our vision for a building like this is housing and programming on the bottom. And one of the goals I know SOWINS has had for a long time is around some of those employment, life skills, vocational programs. A lot of our women, they want to work, they want to get jobs, they want to become independent. And there's just a piece, that a gap, a programming gap that's missing between that and them actually seeking that employment. So we've looked at different models. We've looked at models that We actually partner with local businesses and we have an employment counselor that liaison in between clients and employers to make sure that there's constant communication and things are going well, so that we can have better economic outcomes for both the labor force and the women clients. So I think we see this as not just the provision of housing, we see this as a building independence program that's really going to assist women and families move forward, move beyond just survival and into a stage of being able to thrive in the South of Okanagan.
So thank you very much for listening to us.
Yes, thank you.
And if you have any questions.
Well, thank you, Marieze and Danielle. That was an excellent presentation for sure. Definitely like to know a lot more about next steps and you know, the size. There's so many questions that come to mind right away. But for myself, anything to do with children is so important with the situation table that we recently started. Really, the main focus is going to be getting to those children that are in high-risk environments, which is exactly what you're talking about there. But I'll open it up for council to have some questions, and I'm sure there'll be a few. Councilor Veintimilla.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you both so much for the presentation. I personally wholeheartedly support a project like this. I was going to speak with the situation table as well, which had so many discussions about early intervention and reaching people before they're in crisis and how that really contributes to the health of the community as a whole. So I think that's really important. In our strategic plan, council has committed to making land contribution to efforts made by local societies and BC Housing and are willing, well, it says willing to fund the construction, which is not necessarily the case here, but we've certainly committed to contributing land where we can. So I think there are going to be some questions. You know, you talked about homes for 20 to 25 women, but what is that going to look like? Because I think that's going to be really important in determining what an appropriate contribution of land would look like. I'm not sure where on Station Street the realtor was speaking about specifically. I know that there are some sort of plots of land that have plans for it.
So it was the piece of land that I believe you just recently took water and provided services to that piece of land. So at the very end, sort of the triangular piece of land. Yeah.
Triangle lot.
Yeah, at the very end. Yeah.
I see kitty corners, the elks.
No, the Legion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, yeah, because there's a few lots, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are basically my comments. I mean, I certainly personally support them.
Yeah, so, yeah, and that's, you know, our next steps. We first had to have some assurance that the town of Oliver, you know, would be on board with this in principle before we go to BC Housing. And, you know, they might have some more ideas and say, well, you know, how about making it bigger or, you know, whatever. So, yeah, so.
I think it's important for the municipality to be on board with something like this from the beginning too, because we want to look at it and make it all of our solution. We don't want necessarily BC Housing to come in, but something in our community that would maybe make sense for Vancouver, but not
Exactly.
I actually did have one more question, if I can. Are you looking at doing multiple projects in your other municipalities? Are you going to do something in Penticton, so you're just in Oliver? Why did you choose Oliver?
Well, because we actually looked at land in a SOWINS or a motel when we were starting the whole process. The problem with the SOWINS is the transportation and the distance to Penticton, lack of transportation. You know, there's not as many services available in the SOWINS as there would be, for instance, in Penticton. It's only half an hour from here to Penticton, and it just is a more central location for us to partner together. It's only half an hour away from each other. So we just feel that, you know, this is the place where we could sort of partner and work collaboratively together. It's not too far for their staff to drive, not too far for our staff, for us to share stuff.
I just wanted to go back quickly to your other comment there, and yeah, absolutely. We see this as like a Desert Sun SOWINS town of Oliver partnership, right? Whether that's like a supportive partnership, however that looks, and then, you know, further going to BC housing saying, we have this really strong partnership between us and the municipality, and we think that this is an important initiative that BC housing, you know, does have a responsibility to help us bring to fruition. So thanks for that comment. Yeah, we definitely see that as partnerships are the way to go in the future.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Councilor.
Well, I was taking notes throughout the whole presentation. I had lots of questions and some comments, and Councilor Rice basically asked them all and made them all. So I echo her comments and questions. And I guess I would just add that I feel that we're very fortunate to have you working in our community. And I love what you said about the power of partnerships. I think that's so important, and we all know it's so important. And hope that we can, you know, move forward with some sort of a partnership. I know that we recently completed or are completing our lands inventory. So perhaps in working with staff, there might be a few more options that come up of available areas. And I can think of a few around the community as well that might be suitable. So I think, as Councilor Gray said, or actually the mayor said, you know, the vision is going to be important to kind of find an area that suits, but I feel pretty confident that working together.
Well, that's very exciting. We, you know, this really, I think this is gonna fill a huge need in our communities, and with very positive outcomes for some of our children and our youth. I'm a huge believer in early intervention, and I think all of you know that I believe in working together. That's why I was such a big supporter of the situation table too, and I want to thank the town of Oliver again for that opportunity and for starting that whole situation table process, because it really has opened the doors for the agencies in the South Okanagan to work together and, you know, to come up with solutions for some of our most vulnerable.
Well, I don't see any other hands up. I guess my question would be to our CAO as well about next steps, but also just timeline. Are we looking at a couple of years, or are we looking at a year, or, you know, like what's the timeline with BC Housing to keep them engaged in the process and continue discussions?
Yeah, we have a meeting with them, next week, I think, or 16th, March 16th. And so they approached us knowing that we were coming to the town tonight. So to discuss what are the next steps with them. We're hoping that they're bringing, they originally told us that there was a director, the interior was missing a director position or something. And so I think we've kind of planted enough seeds that now they've said, okay, we need to get on this a little bit sooner than they thought. And I think too, just with all of the housing reports that are coming out of the entire South Okanagan region right now, we'd love to have a needs assessment for the South Okanagan region, but I think they're just recognizing that in this post, if we can call that pandemic world, we can't wait anymore. And summer is approaching, yes. And our hugest panic right now is those motels are full of our clients.
Yeah.
And what is going to happen?
What we're going to do with them.
We just have, it's like keeps us up at night thinking what is going to happen and where are people going to go. So
both of us, I think, agree that, you know, there's some urgency to the situation, and we don't want it to be years. We want to, you know, move on this quickly and, you know, keep the momentum going.
Thank you, Worship. This is just sort of coming off the top of my head. So I don't know if it's a possibility, but as an interim solution, perhaps while you're waiting for a new build, would maybe be to talk to Macola Housing, who are developing the building behind No Frills, because there may be a period of vacancy prior to all of those units getting done.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Veintimilla?
I just wonder if it would be helpful to have a motion that we supporting the concept.
Yes.
To
Would be very helpful.
Want to make that motion?
Let's be made. I can read it. once it's made. Okay, so the motion would be that council support the transitional housing in principle. That council support the transitional housing initiative in principle. Should it say, does it need to say anything about, as presented by Desert Sun and SOWINS?
Yeah.
So that council support the transitional housing initiative in principle as outlined by Desert Sun and SOWINS. Motion.
It's counseling, not consulting. I think you had a
that's okay.
auto correct, no problem.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Well, I
Thank
think
you
it's
so
gonna
much.
be, we haven't voted yet.
See, we also.
We're going to get our shovels. We'll be right back.
I think it's gonna be very important to be able to quantify exactly what type of land, how much land we need, and what we have available within our inventory. So working with our CAO and getting that information so that the CAO can come to us and we can consider different pieces of property in a timely manner, I think are gonna be very important. So I'll leave that with you and our CAO to work together. And unless there's any other discussion, I will call a question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, that is so awesome. And thank you for the opportunity, yeah,
Absolutely. Nice to meet everybody.
Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, moving to water matters, Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw 1364.02. It's here for third reading. Is there any comments on this one, Corporate Officer, before we?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a reminder, it's been a while that you've seen this. We've had to go through the public consultation process. So the amendments are just to update the bylaw to meet the new provisions outlined in the community charter regarding electronic meetings, and as well just to update the order of proceedings and business. I think we were missing the proclamations point in our list. So the bylaw is just before you for third reading.
Thank you. Mr. Grant.
I'll move that council procedure amendment bylaw 1364.02 be read a third time.
Moved. Second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 2, irrigation diversion and start dates for 2022. I will pass this over to the Director of Operations.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's that time of year again, we have to start thinking about the irrigation season. The purpose of this report is to determine the start dates for the 2022 canal diversion and the official irrigation season. So the staff can start advertising and allowing customers and town employees enough time to plan for the irrigation season. Just make a couple points. In my report, it takes, just for council to remember, it takes about 4 days to properly fill the canal and get the pump houses ready and do the necessary work. Farmers do have spray fillers available. We do fill the lines, some of the lines prior to the irrigation season, so they can spray and do use it for other needs. And we're hoping the temperatures stay a little more mild, just so our our crews can do the proper maintenance on the irrigation canal. And we are planning 250 meters of restoration on the walls and in the floor. So extra concrete work, which is generally done at the end of March, just before we divert water from the Okanagan River into the canal. It seems to me, and from my recent meetings with our contractor and engineers, that Gallagher Lake is on schedule. So let's cross our fingers that that doesn't change. And what staff are proposing is that the start dates this year to divert water from the Okanagan River would be April 5th. And then we're also looking at the irrigation season to start on Monday, April 11th. That'll give us enough time. There's a lot to learn with the new pump house that's being built, and but we can flow water through it for the first month without even using a pump. So we're good that way. We're going to test it in many different ways when it comes online. And if council has any questions.
Any questions for the director? Would somebody like to move the staff recommendations? Councilor Michelle?
I'll move it.
Moved. Second. Second, Councilor Grace. Any further discussion? Councilor Michelle?
Just your worship, I think it's more or less in line with other years. I read through it and I should find. But I know we don't provide frost protection for farmers, but farmers do use our water for frost protection. So it's pretty.
Oh, we don't.
Absolutely, it works. Anyway, I'm actually glad I was asked the question about Gallagher. I wonder if council is going to have an opportunity to direct it to go there. I'd like to go.
Yeah, we're planning on something, I think mid-April, and then everybody can go out there and be it's kind of a ribbon cutting in a sense. The canal will be working, the pump house will be working, but we can give a tour at that time, mid-April, hopefully, like.
Before there's water.
Oh, before there's
Yeah,
water.
I wouldn't mind going out there and seeing it before it's full.
That could be, yeah, we might be able to arrange that. I'll have to get back to council.
Yeah, I'd like to, if we can, I'd like to see it before water, because it's quite a
It is quite the
Yeah,
building when you get in there.
Corporate officer?
I can't provide something with before water, but I've been working with True for the ribbon cutting, and they did give me a time today. So it's April 14th at 10 is the ribbon cutting. I'll put it in the calendars. The province has expressed an interest in being involved as well.
For the ribbon cutting, for sure. And if there is opportunity to get out and just have a look at it, that would be great as well.
Yeah, I can see if we can arrange something for the end of March.
Well, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have the motion moved and second, so just call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Anything to report this evening, Councilor Michelle?
just the afternoon.
We'll move to bylaws then. The zoning amendment bylaw 1380.2, 491 Salamander Avenue is here for adoption. I don't think, do you have any comments, Director? If not, we will move forward with adoption.
No comments, Your Worship.
Thank you. Would someone like to move the recommendation for adoption? Moved. Second. Any further discussion on the zoning amendment? Seeing anything, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. The next item is zoning amendment bylaw
Mayor
13.
Johansson,
Yes.
we have a motion to approve the development permit as a separate motion.
Oh,
So we have that council approved development permit 2021-30.
So
moved, second, please. Second, Councilor. Any further discussion? Question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Now item 2, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.226955 Meadows Drive. This is here for third reading. I'll pass it over to Director of Operations.
Thank you, Worship. This application was the subject of our public hearing tonight. It's for 6955 Meadows Drive, and it's before council for third reading. The staff recommendation is that zoning amendment bylaw 1380.22 be read a third time, and that zoning amendment bylaw 1380.22 be forwarded to the Ministry of Transportation for approval prior to adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I'll move the recommendation. Moved. Second. Any further discussion on this amendment bylaw? Councilor Marieze?
I'd just like to make the comment that given the lack of comment at the public hearing and all the positive comments that we've received written, that it's a good move for your agricultural and residential.
Not seeing any more hands, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to item 3, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.23 lots 5 and 6 KP 64043. This is to repeal first and second reading. Director.
Thank you, Worship. This application was before council 2 weeks ago, the public hearing on February 14th. The application was referred back to staff for additional information. However, since that time, the developer has withdrawn the application and is now deciding to proceed ahead with the single family lots as is. And the town has issued preliminary approval already for that subdivision. So it's expected that works will be underway for the single family subdivision within the next month or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the Director? Anybody like to move the staff recommendation to repeal first and second reading? Moved. Second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I will call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Number 4, zoning amendment bylaw 1380.25 1032 Rockcliffe Road. This is for first and second reading. I'll pass this over to our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Worship. This application is for 1032 Rockcliffe Road, and it's in regards to zoning amendment bylaw 1380.25. Property location map. The property is located along Rockcliffe Road in close proximity to the cemetery. The OCP designation for the property is LR, low density residential, and the zoning for the property is RS1. The applicant is proposing to complete a 2-lot subdivision on the subject property. Given that the lot width of 13.9 meters and size 410 square meters of the proposed lot A does not meet the minimum 15-meter width and 555 square meters required in the RS1 zone, a rezoning to RS4, which is residential low density 4, is required. Here are photos of the subject property. On the left shows the Rockcliffe Road elevation, and on the right, same thing as well, looking towards it'd be the east. The left shows the existing dwelling, and on the right shows the rear portion of the subject property. As mentioned, the amendment bylaw is from RS1 to RS4, and it is for the small portion of the property on the west half. Staff consider that the proposed zoning amendment bylaw represents best use of the land for the following reasons. The residential policies of the OCP speak to prioritizing residential growth and infill within the town's boundaries over the extension of boundaries. The growth management objectives of the OCP speak to supporting efficient use of land in the town, including the infilling of vacant lots. The proposal converts an underutilized portion of a property into an additional lot in a desirable area without changing the character of the neighborhood. Although the proposed lot size of 410 is less than the neighboring lots, adequate space exists for the construction of a 2,200 square foot single family dwelling within the required setbacks, and that would be the footprint. Furthermore, the proposal is the gentlest form of densification in a previously established neighborhood. And I did want to touch a little bit on, there was a subdivision application for this property last fall and preliminary approval was given. And that was to split the property in half, which would have seen the additional dwelling torn out completely and then a single family, two single family lots of equal size being created. But since that time, it's been decided by the applicant, given that there's still some value in the existing house. The deck has been removed. So you'll see in this photo here on the left, there's this older blue deck that's been removed, which allows the property line to be created a little bit closer to the existing dwelling. The options for council is council may choose to support the recommendation, may choose not to, or may choose to refer back to staff. The staff recommendation is that the bylaw be read a first and second time and proceed to a public hearing, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for March 14th, 2022, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for the director? Councilor Grace?
Thank you, Worship. I'll speak in favor of the recommendation. I agree with the rationale of the letter from the applicant. And I think, a smaller lot that you could build a smaller house on might be just, what somebody needs to get started in our community. So, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Councilor Veintimilla?
I'll just echo those comments. I appreciated the letter that came along with the application, just to sort of show us the thought process that the applicant went through to get to this point. And I like what the director said, which I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but that this is a gentle form of densification. It seems appropriate, and it seems like it would be appropriate for the neighborhood.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilor Schwarzenberg?
I think it will be a good addition to the community without creating too much problem, and I would move the staff recommendation.
Move. Second, Councilor Marieze. Any further discussion? Not seeing, I will call the question. In favor? Opposed, motion is carried. Moving to item 5, Heritage Designation Bylaw 1407. This is for the Fairview Jail. I will pass it over to the Director of Development Services. This is here for first and second reading.
Thank you, Worship. The purpose of this report is to introduce Heritage Designation Bylaw 1407, which will designate the Fairview Jail as a heritage building as per Section 611 of the Local Government Act. In terms of heritage value for this building, a statement of significance has been attached, which was completed by the Oliver and District Heritage Society. In terms of its value or character, it states that the significance of the Fairview Jail lies in its historic, aesthetic, cultural, social, and scientific values, particularly in its working history, its use as a museum exhibit space, its purpose-built architecture, and its unique construction method. In summary, the heritage qualities of the jail lend itself to being designated as a heritage building under the Local Government Act. With that, the staff recommendation is that council give first and second reading to the designation bylaw, and that the holding of the public hearing be scheduled for March 14th, 2022, and that staff give notice of the public hearing in accordance with the requirements of the Local Government Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any comments or questions for the Director? Councilor Schwarzenberg?
Thank you, Worship. Not really a question, but and I've sat on the Heritage Board for a while, but I couldn't believe when I read this that it wasn't already designated as a heritage building. So I am very much in favor of this going forward.
Move it.
I will move staff recommendation.
Moved and second. Yeah, this is timely for sure. About time, actually. If there's no further discussion or questions, I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Business Information Protection Policy, ICBC. I will pass this over to our clerk officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to seek council's approval of Information Protection Policy, ICBC. The town recently completed a privacy monitoring audit questionnaire through the ICBC Privacy and FOI Department. The town of Oliver is, a public body, and we're governed by FIPA. As part of the audit, it was recommended that the town have a written corporate privacy policy. The policy is not only for public transportation, but also as a guide for staff when they're handling ICBC information and complaints from the public. It's considered quite sensitive material. So they did provide a couple of templates for a policy, and I utilized the one that's provided. So it outlines how we access it and how we will protect it, and what happens if there is a potential breach, and that our retention and disposal follows our records management policy or bylaw. So the recommended motion is that council approves information protection policy ICBC.
Thank you, corporate officer. Any questions for the corporate officer? Not seeing any. Councilor Veintimilla? Moved. Moved in second. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I have no question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Proclamations. Proclamation request BC Epilepsy Society. Corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. We received a request from BC Epilepsy organization. They're seeking council to proclaim March 26, 2022 as International Purple Day for epilepsy awareness. They have requested, the proclamation, and the recommendation before council is that council resolved to proclaim International Purple Day for Epilepsy Awareness Day, and that council directs staff to light up town hall purple on March 26, 2022. And I've attached the draft proclamation to my report for your consideration.
Thank you, corporate officer. Any questions, discussion, or would anybody like to move the motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councilor Riggs. Second. Moved in second. Councilor Swift. Favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Moving to correspondence.
Thank you, Your Worship. A few items for council's consideration in the correspondence. The first is Oliver Parks and Recreation has submitted an application for a youth employment and skills strategy program grant application. The letter of support was provided before this meeting. So this resolution is that council endorsed the letter of support for Oliver Parks and Recreation Society's youth employment and skills strategy. Yes, program grant application.
Thank you, corporate officer. We get a mover of the motion. Moved in second. Any further discussion? All question, all in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. And the second piece of correspondence was routed through Councillor Marieze. Was an email from Leah Sampson from the Okanagan Regional Library. They sent out a request to all their board members to take a draft UBCM resolution to consider passing a motion to sell them, which gets directed to UBCM. With that in mind, the regional district has submitted their resolution, and Silga is seeking that maybe we send a collaborative resolution, or we sponsor the regional districts. But I promised Councillor Marieze that I would give him an opportunity to talk.
There's not much to say. It's actually been handled very well by staff. I think the resolution is going to come forward at SOGA. We would be too late at this point to get it put forward. So at this point, I would suggest just receive and file.
Okay. We could provide a letter of support to the regional district to go with the resolution.
If you wish, it's been, this was put forward at every council in the system. So It's whatever council wishes.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree with receiving file, the resolution is on it, so we can still that, I'm sure we'll get support there.
So I would make a motion to receive.
Second. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried.
Thank you very much. The third piece is a letter from an Oliver resident living in Trimmer, Hansen, regarding a request for a comprehensive review of McKinney Place continuing care facility in Oliver. She has a letter that's attached to your correspondence report with the motion that council directs staff to draft a letter to all levels of government requesting a review of McKinney Place in Oliver, or council can receive and file.
Thank you, Corp Officer. I would just say that I did sit down, I guess this week, and did have a meeting with Betty Trimmer and mentioned to her that we did put an EBCM resolution forward, but it didn't get to the floor. It actually just went to the executive and we never did get a response back. Probably something we should submit again, since it will be in person this year, it may get a chance for discussion. But I think drafting a letter would be worthwhile as well, in consideration of we have a large number of fatalities in those two facilities, not just McKinney, but Sunnybank as well. And keeping this in front of the Ministry of Health, I think is a good thing. So I'm looking for a motion that council directs staff to draft a letter to all levels of government requesting a review of McKinney Place in Oliver. So moved in second. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried.
Maybe I just ask a question.
Sure.
Just a question to that point before we move on. When do we normally hear back from UBCM about motions that don't make it to the floor?
I can't say the exact timeline, but for this one, I have to go into the resolution database and just see where it landed. Sometimes we will hear back through the ministry on what was decided, but that one I don't recall reply back, so I looked in the database.
Okay. Yeah, so it doesn't make sense to write it forward. Makes sense to write it forward.
Yeah, it went to executive, so it didn't go to the ministry, I guess. So I'm not sure what happened to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's still with them.
Yeah. Well, they have a lot to go through. That's, I'm just wondering what's their time frame.
That could be very well the case. And the last piece was received as a late item through Councillor Grace. This correspondence dated February 28th, 2022 from Donna Ashcroft, requesting the town show support of all of the Ukrainian population and their homeland families. A proposed motion could be that council directs staff to show all of their Ukrainian population support by lighting up town hall blue and yellow and promoting on its social media platforms, or council may wish to receive and file.
So guys,
Thank you, Worship. If anyone's interested, I could read the letter. It's quite short. If anyone's interested in hearing, I don't think it's correspondence. It just arrived. Oh, okay. In that case, I will move this motion.
second, moved in second. Is there a specific date that we would target for?
We would have to make a request through Public Works, and the Director of Operations was saying it might take some configuration to do split the lights, because we do have lights at town hall. So one yellow, one blue, I'm not sure.
I'm unsure if we can do two colors with that system. We'll have to look into it.
Okay.
And then we'll let you guys know.
But we can definitely show support on our social media platforms.
Thank you. Questions, hands, I'll call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried. And I think that's it for correspondence, so nothing for information.
Last item would just be that the February 28th weekly mail be received, which you received this morning.
So move,
Second.
moved in second. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion is carried.
Council reports, Council Veintimilla.
So just realized I'm up first and I hadn't written the list, so quick,
You
flip
can go
to the calendar.
Can you go to Council source?
I'm good, I just have a couple of things here. So, just last Tuesday, the 22nd, I attended virtual public information meeting to the regional district on environmentally protected zones. And just yesterday, we had the second Christmas light up committee meeting of the year, so off to the races. Not anywhere.
Thank you, Council Veintimilla. Council Schwarzenberg.
Thank you, Worship. Wednesday, February 23rd, I attended the agenda review with the mayor and senior staff and today's.
Council Grace.
Thank you, Worship. On Tuesday, the 22nd, I had an Oliver Parks and Rec Society meeting. We had Jim Safino, the CFO of the RDUS, come to answer questions in regards to the admin fee and today's meetings.
Council Grace, Council Ross.
Thank you, Your Worship. The February 16th was the board.
And for myself, I February 17th, RDUS, and on the 22nd, I also attended the Parks and Recreation regular meeting. Our next meeting, regular meeting in council is on March the 14th, acting mayor schedule for, this your last day, Council Schwarzenberg. In March, April, and May, Councilor Marieze. Any question, public question time, if anybody has a question? Anything that was on the agenda?
There is 2 people in on the Zoom, no one's left, so there's 1 person on Zoom, but we do have members in the audience.
So I hit you. I think we're good. Not seeing anybody with a question, we will, I'll look for motion to adjourn. Second, all question, all in favor? Opposed?
What was the outcome of the discussion regarding the service fee from the RDUS?